Hey, happy Tuesday night, everybody. It's on Texas Football's Tuesday live stream, brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. And we're excited to be with you, Aaron Hogan, along with TJ Vogel and Rod Babers. And a lot to get to. Like normally, this Tuesday night would be previewing next Wednesday's big window national signing period recruiting. But we know it's a new day, it's a new time in college football, hardly even a blip on the radar right now. CJ, it's more, you've been covering the recruiting beat for a long time. I've been doing radio for 25 years in Austin, and that first Wednesday in February always used to be, mark your calendar. It's kind of like a holiday and be ready. Now it's not much going on, but it's about junior days and other things. It's amazing how the recruiting calendar has flipped in the last couple 3 years.
Yeah, 100%. It feels like this upcoming signing day doesn't have any significance anymore, and it will for a number of teams, but for Texas, it really doesn't. They were in position to be in contention for a 5-star wide receiver out of Saraland, Alabama. That was Ryan Williams. He obviously decided to stick with Alabama despite Nick Saban departing, but it was a pretty quiet second half of the signing period for Texas. And I think right now, for the Texas staff specifically, it's a benefit to move on to the 25 class, get ready for the upcoming cycle, and as well as looking ahead towards 26. We talked about a 120-person junior day. Is Texas really going to be able to have that kind of jump towards the next cycles if they're still trying to fight and hold on to a handful of guys in the current class? Probably not. So I credit the Texas staff for getting as many signatures as they could lined up for the 24th class in December. They knocked it out. They got it all out of the way, and they can look ahead and go forward to the upcoming cycle. So yeah, not a lot to celebrate this upcoming weekend, but hey, credit to Texas. They got the job done one way or another.
Yeah, top 5 recruiting class again. 18 are already on campus, along with the 8 portal additions that are here. So a lot of new faces on the 40 acres as the winter workouts have begun. Some additions on the coaching staff as far as on the Kenny Baker hire, which we'll talk about. Also some analysts that have been added, so we'll talk about that too. But to your point, CJ, it's Sark, and we saw him out at Saraland, Alabama today with AJ Milwee talking to KJ Lacey. I mean, it's about next year. I mean, it's about really the hay's in the barn on this class, along with the portal. There may be some additions, obviously, come spring when the portal opens again after spring practice for everybody. But, this is about setting up the big class for the following year. And I think, and we've heard from a lot of our recruiting experts, including yourself, that win over Alabama, the trip to the Final Four, the Big 12 championship, the move to the SEC officially, all those things start to have real impact on the recruiting trail in 25 and 26. Which it seems like this coaching staff are already out ahead of.
Yeah, that snowball effect is real in recruiting. And when you can combine that with the on-field results and now what we're seeing in the Senior Bowl as well, with a couple former Longhorns really starting to play well and perform on the big stages ahead of this NFL draft, I mean, it's all, full steam ahead for the Longhorns and just about every aspect of being a football program. And, that's encouraging because, as you mentioned, I mean, we're talking about Texas visiting just about every major program in the state of Texas a week ago. And now if you look across the country to see where, the Texas staff is, it's certainly encouraging. Blake Gideon's down at Atlanta. Sarkisian was out in Saraland today talking with KJ Lacey, the current Texas 2025 commit. And there's just a lot going on. It's really encouraging. Sarkisian actually also got to meet with the number 6 overall prospect in the 26 classification, Anthony Jones out of Mobile. He's at St. Paul's Christian Academy in Mobile. A lot to talk about. Tashard Choice also out of Mississippi today. So Texas hitting the Deep South very hard. And I want to talk about Tashard Choice a little bit more. He was seeing 2025 running back Keelan Deere. And if you've not watched his tape just yet, we linked to it on the On Texas Football website earlier this morning. That's a kid that looks like he's a national conversation for being the top running back in the country. We've talked about Texas having kind of the pick of their litter with Tashard Choice. Jordan Davidson's in that mix. Tiger Ryden on the in-state mix as well. Ricky Stewart out of Chapel Hill, who was on campus and earned an offer during the junior day. Added Keelan Deere to that watch list for the 25 running backs. Tashard Choice was able to see him in person. His tape is very impressive. And, it's just another foothold for the Texas staff to walk into an out-of-state all SEC kind of conference area and say, we have a foothold here now. We're going to be here for a while. And they're doing a great job at it early on.
Rod, it's pretty interesting. I mean, so much happening, but obviously, 3 of the final 4 coaches have moved on. The Longhorns were a part of. Sark has stayed. Aggies have a new coach down at Texas A&M. Brian Kelly's in year 2. Brett Venables in year 2. It's really amazing when you go back to the announcement of Texas moving to the SEC. And, man, would they be ready? Where are they going to be? How can they catch up? And, man, it seems like they have to what CJ's saying, Rod, they're in an advantage position because Nick Saban's no longer in the conference. At Alabama, Kalen DeBoer's trying to get his footing, obviously, as fast as he can. LSU's got a coach in year 2 year 3 now, going into year 3, and Brian Kelly. But, Oklahoma in transition, A&M big time in transition. This is a real opportunity for Texas to really get a stranglehold on the state of Texas for sure, but also start cherry picking great players from the Deep South and really all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, there is unprecedented turnover, right, at some of the blue blood football programs, and you haven't really seen that. The national champion just had their head coach leave for the NFL, and with that comes almost what seems like a power vacuum in a time where you have the landscape of college football changing drastically, right? 12-team playoff coming next season. A lot of the realignment, the consolidation, if you will, of college football happening next season. And so I'm with you. It almost feels like Texas in the catbird seat. Out of all those programs you're talking about, very few of them return to starting quarterback, along with all the starting coordinators and the head coach as well. Texas returns a lot of that continuity. Georgia's in that conversation too, right? Georgia right now, it seems like in the SEC that the only team that brings back as much continuity as Texas does in the SEC, because there's a lot of turnover. Right? You talked about LSU. LSU's doing great right now, but they're going to lose a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Alabama just lost the GOAT, Nick Saban. Texas A&M, you talked about they're in transition. Texas is about to get, supplant itself into that SEC ecosystem in a time where the ecosystem isn't as formidable as it once was. There's no doubt with Nick Saban leaving, and even as competitive as it was last year with a guy like Jaden Daniels now out of the SEC, it looks like it's going to be Quinn Ewers, and he'll be in a conversation, with Carson Beck to be the best quarterback, not only in that conference, but potentially the most seasoned veteran quarterback coming back among any of the power conferences and the power schools. If Quinn, this is really kind of about Quinn to me too. I expect Sark to continue what he's done. Sark has been really consistent, and I do think Sark's still evolving as a coach, but he showed us a lot last season as a coach and how he is kind of ready to become a championship level coach. And he's kind of, in my opinion, reinvented himself too. But his evolution while he's been on campus at Texas is undeniable. He has gotten better as a coach. But Quinn Ewers, we've seen him getting better. We need to see both of those entities, coach and player, take their game to the next level going to the SEC. And it's a prime time for it. And as you just pointed out, you're seeing the benefits of the 2023 run in the 2025, 2026 recruiting. Man, you hit another run here in 2024, and then you can start stacking those classes. All right. And, we talked about Texas, not being able to be negatively recruited against right now. It's hard to have a negative recruiting pitch against Texas. You book in 2 seasons like you had last season with another one, potentially winning the SEC, making your way to the playoff. The brand has not been in that situation. I don't know when the last time the brand has been in a situation where you've won, back-to-back conference championships. It's been a while. 2008 in 2009, you came really close, and the brand was in a really good place then. But I think that's, if you're Texas, that's where I think you could be again. And those were in the heydays, the prime days of the Texas brand, 04, 05, 08, 09.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it is amazing because, Kalen DeBoer now at Alabama, but Nick Saban gone. There'll be a natural slide. Look, other programs we mentioned, Sam Pittman not in a good place at Arkansas right now. He's making changes and trying to hang on. Billy Napier at Florida in the same spot. Georgia and Texas are in the power position, CJ. Now you got the word today out of Tennessee that the NCAA is coming after the Volunteers for, NIL infraction. I mean, I know fans are like, well, what is illegal, what's not? We're hearing about maybe a prospect on a private jet, maybe signing a contract with an NIL while he's still in high school. The NCAA is still trying to have some influence. I don't know how much power they have, but Tennessee could be in some hot water along with Florida State for some recruiting violations that we're seeing. So again, it's an ever evolving landscape, an ecosystem as Rod calls it. but headed into the SEC officially in July the 1st of 2024 here. They'll officially enter that conference. It feels like they're in a pretty good place versus the competition in that conference.
Yeah, I would say so 100%. And I think you look at the SEC holistically right now, and you think Texas is, right there with Georgia as not only the two most talented teams, but the two teams that are in best positions to continue winning in terms of what they have continuity-wise. A&M's having a brand new head coach they got to run into the SEC with this year. Florida and Arkansas are sitting around wondering, how do we keep this guy? How do we turn things around with their guy right now? LSU just lost a Heisman winner. So, they're going to be fixing a couple things. Nick Saban's gone from Alabama. You can look around and say Missouri's on the right track. Ole Miss is on the right track. Oklahoma, even, I would say, is, kind of on that right path, but they have a brand new quarterback and a brand new offensive line they have to break in, whereas Texas is returning those pieces. So I look at this first year in the SEC as a way for Texas to make a continual splash of the jump that they made in 2023 onto the national scale. That cannonball, if you will, soon enough that splash will wear out. Well, right now it looks like they're about to jackknife back into the pool and get a re-splash of everybody else across the country, because it's lining up very well for them right now. And I think a lot of programs in which they thought could compete with Texas right away as they entered the SEC are now looking around thinking, well, you know what? We didn't make the college football playoff last year. We don't have the continuation of our coach locked up for 5 or 6 more years. We sure as hell don't have a Quinn Ewers returning for year 3. And our offensive line probably isn't looking as dominant as what we're expecting to be in Austin. So there's a lot of optimistic, reasons to be sitting back and looking at Texas right now thinking, yeah, they're entering the SEC, but they're as well suited as just about any walk in and say, hey, we belong here and we're going to compete at a very high level.
Yeah, and keep the recruiting rolling. And that part of that is the coaching staff, Rod. They lost Jeff Choate, linebackers coach, to take over the head job at Nevada. He took one of the analysts, but you replace him with Johnny Nansen from Arizona, who was their defensive coordinator. He takes essentially a position demotion to come to Texas and reunite with Steve Sarkisian. And now the defensive line coach has been hired. It's Kenny Baker from the Miami Dolphins. 11 years is as long as he's coached, but man, a fast riser who's already ended up in the NFL. You've talked about how rare that is to, in a short amount of time, to essentially go from, the low college level into the NFL in about a 6-year period. Pretty impressive. And now he's already on the recruiting trail, Rod. We've seen him. It was officially announced today by the university. We kind of knew about it late last week, but formalities and contracts and all that. The university, the program put out a statement today about 9:30 that Kenny Baker has been hired, and he's already been seen in a high school down in Cyprus at Cy-Fair, seeing Landon Rink, the recruit from Cypress Fairbanks. And so he's already on the trail, which is a good sign that the D-line coach is already hitting the high schools.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And CJ, you actually have a nice little nugget about this. I was talking to CJ before the show about this, and you actually got some insider info on his trip to H-Town, correct?
Yeah, I chatted a little bit with Landon right after he sat there and got to meet Coach Baker for the first time. And he straight up told me, he's like, I like the guy a lot. He comes with a lot of energy, and you see that passion. I think we are going to see a little bit of what Tashard Choice brings to the offensive side of the ball in terms of being a guy that you can talk to and hang out with and really just be able to connect with from a positional coach perspective. Choice walks into a room and lights it up. And I think you're going to see a little bit like that with Coach Baker as well. Landon Rink had really high remarks to say about Coach Baker. The energy is what was one of the number one things that stood out to him in regards to that, brief kind of talking time that they had this afternoon. So if you're going to bring energy and have that enthusiasm on the recruiting trail, good things are going to follow, which then makes your life easier on the field. So I'm excited about it. Really good early remarks from Coach Baker on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, and already hitting it. And that was a big priority, Rod, for Sark when you had to hire the coach, right? You want someone with energy, the one who wants to hit that recruiting trail with passion, because as you say, it's not for everybody. And it's not a knock against anybody that doesn't want to do it, but it's a full-time commitment. It's just like somebody like CJ or any of these recruiting insiders. It's a lot of work to travel around and make the phone calls. And obviously it's more than that even for a coach. And you also have to coach your position and do all the other things a full-time position coach does. You want someone that does that with full energy and full vigor.
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy it, right, it's not work to you. I mean, CJ loves, obviously following recruiting. He loves being an insider. And so to him, his passion drives him. So putting in 12-hour days, like CJ does, it's not that big a deal. Some people are like, man, you're working real hard. And he is working real hard, trust me. But when it's something that you love and you see that passion as your purpose, and I think that's what recruiting has to be. Because like I said, it's like a full-time job. Essentially, these college coaches got two jobs. They got recruiting, that's a full-time job, and to be a position coach. And it can be really demanding. You have to be able to keep up with relationships, you have to keep up with these young people. You got to stay current. You have to. You ain't got no choice because you're talking to 17, 16, 18-year-old kids. You got to stay current in a certain way too, that I don't even think I am. I don't even know how good I would be on the recruiting trail necessarily. So I do it. Thanks to a certain kind of energy. I think Sark likes having that youthful energy. And listen, I haven't met Coach, I haven't met him personally, but I do think that you start looking at Kenny Baker and his background and how quickly he was able to rise. Trust me, guys, as someone who tried, thought about going to the coaching ranks and did some studying, to be a fast riser like that, you got to first of all, you got to have some talent and coaching, period, whether it be as a recruiter in the college ranks or somebody who can develop talent. And you also have to be someone who values relationships, can cultivate them, can maximize them. That's how you rise that quickly. And honestly, that's recruiting, guys, in a nutshell. It's relationships, maximizing them, cultivating them. They have to matter to you. They have to be valuable to you. And I think for Kenny Baker, that's something that's going to easily translate. Something I was trying to figure out, and my man Jeff Howe helped me to this when we were doing our Longhorn Blitz podcast. And we were trying to figure out the connection to Sark from, Kenny Baker, like how are they connected? Did he just get a random recommendation from someone? Still don't know it for a fact. My man Jeff Howe brought up a good point over there from 247 Sports that maybe Pete Jenkins could be the connection. Pete Jenkins is an old school D-line coach, was D-line coach at LSU, has been a D-line coach, at a number of places. This guy is old school, and one of the most respected D-line coaches around. At one point, and I want to say it was like in the maybe around 2010, somewhere around there, he stopped coaching for a while. And there was like there's like a blank spot, right, in his coaching resume there where he stopped coaching for a while. He stopped coaching because he was putting on coaching clinics for D-line coaches. He was doing clinics for actual coaches. And one of the coaches was Kenny Baker. And Pete Jenkins and Nick Saban go way, way back, like 8 tracks, old school. And that Sark might have gone that route, might have went the Pete Jenkins route to get a recommendation about a young upcoming D-line coach who is great in recruiting and who obviously is a great talent developer, and that may be the connection if we're looking for a connection. Because I was trying to figure it out. I thought maybe it could be the Shanahan tree. Sark loves the Shanahan tree. Mike McDaniel, Shanahan tree. That maybe that could be the route. Could have went 2-3 degrees of separation. I'll admit the Pete Jenkins connection might be a more plausible theory as to how Sark got connected with Kenny Baker, or maybe where the recommendation or referral came from. Because we know that he was with Pete Jenkins as one of those coaches in that D-line camp, and reportedly Pete Jenkins loved him and was throwing his name out a lot when he got a chance or when somebody would ask him about him. So that's something to consider too.
Well, and I think at this point, CJ, you trust Sark with his hires. He's really hit the home runs with everyone. Brendan Marion was only here a year, but he's already a rising candidate. And, Chris Jackson and Tashard Choice have been great, in their roles. And, I think that's says a lot for Sark if you're going to do a deep dive like that and, talk to a old school Yoda on the defensive line coaching, right? Who's the guy I'm going to regret not hiring 5 years from now if I don't hire him now? Who is that guy? You get that word back because, at Texas, you hire someone who he's from mid-major schools and doesn't have a big resume. Sometimes, big money guys and Texas fans are gonna be like, who's this guy? It tells you that Sark is not looking for, kind of like on recruiting. You're not chasing stars and 5 stars in rankings. You're chasing someone that fits and checks the boxes you're looking to check.
Yeah,
Yep.
100%. I think what Rod actually said about the quick progression through the ranks is something that really stood out to me. Combine that with the fact that he has a great approach and great energy towards recruiting. There's a video of him at Western Kentucky talking about wanting to find the guys that want to be with him and want to be with this program and gelling and finding ways to develop on and off the field from there. That's something that I think translates wherever you are as long as you maintain that same mindset. Now at a place like Texas, it's only magnified to this extent of who he can go out and pursue. Right now, he's getting off to a quick start, seeing Landon Rink this afternoon, and I expect to see this continue as long as the coaches are able to be out on the trail. He's going to be racking up some miles over the next couple of days. I think that's for sure.
On the Pete Jenkins thing again. So Sark was at Washington until 2013, and then he goes to USC. Pete Jenkins was the D-line coach, I believe, at if you go look at it, in 2013. He was at USC in 2013. This guy had been a D-line coach going back to 1978 with Oklahoma State. And then was a D-line coach with the LSU from 1980 to like 1990. And then went back to LSU in 2000, then went to the Eagles from 07 to 09, but he had a gap from 2001 to 07, and that's when he was doing these clinics. And one of the guys who went to the clinics for D linemen was Kenny Baker, because he's considered, Pete Jenkins kind of a made man among D-line coaches. And apparently him and Saban from the LSU time, they go way back. And Pete Jenkins used to visit Alabama when Sark was there in 2019 as, just a coach visiting, and how often happens, just try to pick up different, coaching concepts and stuff like that. And that also is where he and Sark's past might have crossed, if they didn't cross earlier from his time when he came to USC right after Pete Jenkins left. So I'm not sure exactly when it would have come, but Pete Jenkins might be that connection, that connective tissue we're looking for. Like, how did Sark find this Kenny Baker guy? Pete Jenkins might be the way.
Yeah, you want that person you can reach out to. It's similar, Rod, to like Coach Gundy up at Oklahoma State. Sometimes it's an off-the-nose hire, right? You're doing a deep dive. You're bringing a guy in that people really haven't heard of. Mike Gundy's been big on that to find guys that, but it doesn't mean they're not good coaches. And you can find good coaches in a lot of places, especially if they check the boxes you're looking to check and feel the needs you're looking for. Because, with Tashard Choice replacing Stan Drayton was doing a hell of a job. I mean, he brought in Bijan Robinson. He helped develop Roshan Johnson. You had to fill those shoes, and Tashard Choice has jumped in and just kept it rolling with the recruiting and the development. Now Jonathan Brooks has a chance to be a day 2 draft pick and things of that nature, and the next wave are coming. So when you're placing a guy like Bo Davis, you want to make sure you get it right, because Bo Davis has done an incredible job since he's been at Texas developing these defensive linemen. I'll do a personal note on Landon Rink from Cy-Fair. His father Shane is on the defensive coaching staff there. That's one of my good buddies from high school. I grew up with Shane. Of course, Shane is a UT legacy. He played at UT in the early 90s. Came in 1 year ahead of Dan Neal. Dan Neal went to my high school as well at Cy Creek, and Dan Neal was 1 year behind us. But Shane's a good buddy. One of these Tuesday nights we'll get Shane on. He's a funny dude, and we'll talk football with Shane. He's a good dude, lifetime Longhorn for sure. I get a little insights, but good dude. So if you're down there in the Cypress area and Coach Rink and that whole crew, tell them we said hello here on the On Texas Football live stream. It's brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings. Hey guys, as the coaches fan out and winter workouts are underway, and as CJ's already told us here tonight that there's probably not much news coming next Wednesday when the signing window opens on the first Wednesday of February. There's not going to be a ton of breaking news in that regard, but CJ, real quick before we talk some Senior Bowl and the Longhorns who are participating, there were going to be as many as 8 Longhorns at the Senior Bowl. Now it's down to 2 as far as who's participating because of some injuries and some guys who came back. But what about Michigan? Are we hearing? I know the Michigan window's open. Jim Harbaugh's now officially gone since we've talked last Tuesday. Sharon Moore has been, promoted, kind of like, Lincoln Riley or Ryan Day, kind of taking the reins of the program from a legendary coach. What are we hearing out of Michigan? We talk about, add drop periods and transfer portal. It's open, but can they actually leave and get into school somewhere? What are you hearing on the trail about Michigan and Michigan players?
It's a little bit of an awkward spot right now. Texas is supposed to be the ending of the early, add drop period for Texas as they enter the spring semester. There are exceptions available if you apply or, kind of appeal, I guess is the better word there for Texas admissions. right now it's a waiting game to see who all does depart from Michigan. Right now, I think the first departure that we've seen into the portal was today, a third-year defensive end that I don't really think Texas would have a whole lot of interest in. Only had 43 snaps of play in this past season. So I think for Texas to go out and pursue a portal guy from Michigan, it's going to have to be one of those guys that you see on the field with real experience, real production. Right now, Texas is going to be monitoring any fallout from anywhere. Not just Michigan, but Michigan, of course, is the hot topic. Harbaugh taking the Chargers job, taking the defensive coordinator and the strength and conditioning coach with him, who was really one of the biggest pins in place right there to hold everything together since his departure. With him leaving right now, things are kind of in that awkward waiting phase because things might open up just a little bit for Michigan as their 30-day window continues into deep February, as we expect a little bit of attrition to come as a result. Right now, if they do depart, they might be looking at a spot right now where they might have to sit out the rest of the semester until they can apply for the summer. It might actually be a better position for these Michigan kids to sit back and wait until the spring before entering their name into the portal, just so that it's a smoother transition into the admissions from a standpoint of getting into classes and enrolling from there. So that might be where we're at right now, but I think Michigan's done a tremendous job of ensuring the kids on campus right now that things are still going to be moving in the right direction under Sharon Moore.
And that was, I think, by design, Rod. We talked about that with Jim Harbaugh, kind of playing out the clock and letting it wait, and kind of knowing how it would play out when he took the Chargers job, because I think the Chargers job was waiting for him when he wanted to take it, and that was really smart because we saw what happened at Alabama when Nick Saban retired, and all hell broke loose in Tuscaloosa as far as that goes. But as a player side, I mean, now Sharon Moore's get a chance to make an impression. Does look like the defensive coordinator, Zach Minter, is going to be going with the Chargers. The strength conditioning coach looks like he's going to the Chargers as well. So there'll be some new faces. And, that's this time of year is when that strength conditioning coach, that's your guy. That's the guy you see the most. This will be important for Michigan. And as you were a former player, Rod, you never played within the transfer portal era. But, now we'll see how they, keep this thing together for post-spring practice.
Yeah, I mean, and Jim Harbaugh gets to pick his successor for the second time, right? He basically appointed David Shaw to be his successor at Stanford, and now he's picking Sharon Moore. I would say the David Shaw thing worked out pretty well, at least for a few years, until I think ultimately things kind of unraveled for David Shaw. But yeah, how long can he keep the Harbaugh brand of football in place, intact, until he can put his own spin on it, all right, until Sharon Moore can come up with his own version of brand or identity of Michigan football. Right now it looks like they're going to keep a lot of it together. I think it helps that, Harbaugh was a Michigan man. That helps, right? Because that's kind of, he was trying his best to do what was best for Michigan, the program, and not really best for himself. And you got to respect that. And I think that's what the slow play was about. And it helps that the players know Coach Moore. He's been around there, 6 years, something like that. They know him. He's been around there for a while. So that helps too. That's different than Alabama as well in a lot of ways. But at least that's why they remember that at one point they were thinking about keeping the offensive coordinator. They were trying to promoting him as the head coach, Tommy Rees, because I think they were just trying to keep some continuity. He got a job in the league, actually. I forgot who with. I got to look that up. I just saw that Tommy Rees got hired as a position coach. I believe it was. Yeah, go look it up. It's random too.
Browns tight end coach, I believe.
Yeah, it was out of nowhere, and I was like, "What? That's weird." Anyway, I digress. My point is, they got a better chance for him to at least be able to keep some of the brand of football and identity intact, because you stack the roster. Harbaugh was there forever. You can keep most of those same guys there. And he knows what the identity of that team is. I think they actually can still somewhat keep it, moving. I don't know if they'll be able to win championships again. It took them a while just to get that one, but I do think they'll be winning double-digit games. I think they got enough talent on that roster to do that.
And CJ, that's pertinent because, we were talking about the SEC and the Longhorns seem ready for it. Longhorns play in Ann Arbor in early September, week 2. And so Sharon Moore will be the new head coach, and J.J. McCarthy will be gone. They'll have to break in a new quarterback. So that's another opportunity for the Longhorns to maybe be in an advantage position in a tough road game against a Big Ten team who just won the national championship, much like last year in Tuscaloosa where Nick Saban was there, but new coordinators on both sides, new quarterback, and Longhorns went in there and won the game by 10 points.
I think there's a lot of similarities from what you see from Texas going into Alabama last year to what Texas will be going into this upcoming year in Ann Arbor. Obviously, a little bit different. Harbaugh's gone, Saban stayed, but you're getting a brand new quarterback. Michigan's losing a lot of production from this national championship winning team. They also have a very talented group of guys returning. We talked about Kenneth Graham, Mason Graham, Will Johnson as well. He's probably that number one cornerback in the entire country. He was the MVP or defensive MVP of the national title game. To say that Michigan won't have talent is a bit, a bit selling it short. But to say that they're going to be ready week 2 against a team like Texas after what they were losing from this past year, I think is a little bit of a stretch. So I do expect Texas to be the favorite. I think they are the favorite by about 2.5 points at the moment. That was before Jim Harbaugh even left. So who knows what that line might move to or how the Vegas odds makers might view that game as we get closer to the fall. But right now, I love where Texas is heading into into that game in Ann Arbor. Excuse me.
Yeah,
tough talking here. Tuesdays are kicking me. But I do think the biggest question mark for that game will be the Texas run defense. We talked about how talented Michigan is in both sides of the trenches. They love running the ball down your throats. We saw a game this year where Michigan was like, you know what, for 25 straight plays, we're going to hand the ball off to Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. And Penn State, a good defense, you're not going to stop it. If Texas is shaky in that front seven, that could be how we talked about things not being a great fit as we saw against Washington. That's Texas's kryptonite against Michigan.
Yeah.
Good point.
Well said. 100% well said, even though you stumbled through Ann Arbor, but that happens when you're doing a lot of radio and doing a lot of TV.
It's the double A's,
a lot of YouTube. Hey, Rod, not to belabor that point, but Texas beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa by 10 and was the first team in 50-some games to win it, really because of continuity, right? They went in with a game plan they had prepared for with the, returning quarterback and a lot of returning players. Michigan, they're still going to be super talented, as CJ said, but continuity is a big thing. And you're breaking in a new quarterback and probably a new offensive, not total system, but just changes. Defensively, Minter's going off to the Chargers. Continuity matters, especially early. The Longhorns probably didn't want to play Alabama in week 10, but to play them in week 2 was a big advantage for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's why I feel confident the Longhorns can go to Ann Arbor and win the game. It's because they have a veteran quarterback. All the coordinators are still intact. They don't have to go through the growing pains that Michigan inevitably will have to go through while guys are acclimating to a new defensive system. We don't know who that's got. Maybe they'll promote somebody from within. It won't have to, but it'll be a new style of play caller. I'm sure the terminology could be slightly different. It's just it'll be a different vibe overall. They'll be playing at home, but Texas, having 4 of their 5 returning starters on your offensive line, Michigan's going to have a historic draft, reportedly, if you listen to Jim Harbaugh. So they're going to lose a lot. Now, they got a lot of, like I said, they stacked some classes. There's some first-rounders on that roster right now. And aside from the guys that are leaving, they're first-rounders, underclassmen on that roster right now. CJ probably can break some of them down to you. But, and I don't think those guys will leave. I think those guys actually probably will stay there at Michigan. So they got a lot of unproven commodities. But think about how long Harbaugh had been there, guys. He's been there a long time. And he's been stacking. Yeah, even stacking classes. They're still loaded. Now, will they have the schematic, strategic, tactical advantage that you get with Harbaugh? Will they lose a little bit of the edge you get with Harbaugh? Because Harbaugh's all edge, right? Will you lose some of that? Probably, because Harbaugh takes that with him. That's just part of who he is, and that DNA seeps into the fabric of the team. So you're probably going to lose that, and that's probably where your edge was in terms of Michigan just being able to overwhelm teams and impose their will against teams. Tom Herman used to always have a great saying, football essentially is a game that comes down to moving another human being against their will, and Michigan does that better than anybody in the country. They move human beings against their will. And they do it really well. And I think that's if they can still do that, man, they still gonna win they'll win ugly games, but they'll win them.
Well, I know a lot of our On Texas Football Tuesday live stream watchers are headed to that game in Ann Arbor in September, have their tickets. They're ready to go, flying to Detroit and head over there, a 50-minute drive down to Ann Arbor and take in the big house maybe for the first time for a lot of people. That'll be a lot of fun, much like the Tuscaloosa game 1 year ago. And there are parallels here with the new coach coming in and a lot of change at Michigan, while the Texas Longhorns come in with a lot of continuity at coaching and positions. Before we shift gear to some Senior Bowl and some more off-season conversation here on this Tuesday, let me tell you about our friends at Texas Electricity Ratings. For those of y'all still living here in Texas that watch the YouTube and watch the channel, in major cities, especially the ones that are deregulated, like in Dallas and Houston, you understand the deregulated electricity market can be very confusing. Texas Electricity Ratings is a shopping website that lets you compare prices, read customer reviews, find a good electricity provider that fits your needs. And it filters out a lot of the gimmicky plans and websites, gives you the power to choose. A lot of them are going to try to trick you, into more expensive bills. You get that. You want to avoid it. So if you're in the market for a new electricity plan, shop TexasElectricityRatings.com. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF. Make sure you do the On Texas Football OTF for all of your electricity needs and hook them from Texas Electricity Ratings. We appreciate them every Tuesday night for bringing us the live stream. Guys, Senior Bowl for folks, it started in Mobile, and we know the game is Saturday in Mobile, Alabama. All the GMs from all 32 NFL teams will be there. All the, it's one of the big gatherings of the offseason. Super Bowl's one, but the GMs go to the Senior Bowl and the Combine. That's where they head up, and that's where everybody lands. But the Longhorns were at one point going to have as many as 8 players participating here at the Senior Bowl. But we know Jahdae Barron and Alfred Collins both were invited, and they both decided to come back for another year at Texas, which is a big boost for the Longhorns, keeping the big defensive tackle from Bastrop and the veteran defensive back from Pflugerville. They'll be back. And then, several Longhorns showed up or didn't come just because of injury, which and we can speak to that. But right now, only 2 Longhorns there. Tavondre Sweat is going through his work, and Christian Jones, the 60-year right tackle, Jalen Ford, Byron Murphy, we're on the list to be there, but they're not 100% healthy, so they want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and not doing themselves a disservice, so they're not 100% and ready to go for this thing. And Rod, you spoke to that this morning on our show on the Horn here in Austin, that this is your agents. And then this is you're just showing up for an all-star game essentially, right? And you're taking the risk here. If something were to happen and injuries could happen, if you're not 100%, if you're a Byron Murphy and you're projected as a top 20 pick in the draft, you can do more harm than good here showing up if you're not 100%. Jalen Ford in the same vein. Jordan Whittington also was invited, but I don't know if you played in any of these all-star games when you were coming out, Rod, but it's an honor, but at the same time, the big picture is you got to worry about yourself.
Yes. And even aside from the injuries, right? Anything that's bothering you or lingering, even if it's small and, you can play through it, you should decide to do what's best for your professional career and prospects. So you should pass on the game. And that, by the way, scouts and coaches don't hold that against players at all, because they know they got to prepare for the pre-draft process. And there's so much at stake for these guys. So they don't expect them to, risk all that and risk re-injury or aggravating that injury just to play in the game. And it doesn't just apply to injuries. It also applies to question marks, right? In your scouting and evaluation, data points that may work against you. Say Tavondre Sweat, right? Tavondre Sweat did not want to weigh in at the Senior Bowl. Why? Because one of the data points working against Tavondre Sweat is his weight. Is he too big? Right? He weighed in at 360, or he was listed at 362 pounds, 6'4". Matt Miller, NFL draft scout, points out Sweat did not weigh in, opted not to do it. He's going to wait to a more favorable time to do so. Maybe at the combine, maybe at a pro day, whenever he feels like he's at his best, most ideal weight. So he probably is trying to lose like 10, 12 pounds. Maybe wants to get down to 350, 355, whatever it is. I know you're like, what? 6, 7 pounds. What this does make? It makes a huge difference. Trust me. Rod B measuring in at 5'8 3/4 at the combine. If I'd have been 5'9, I'd have got drafted a round higher. I was told that. 5'9". That's all I get. 5'8", 5'9". 1 round higher. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's the truth. That's what happens. All right. So those negative data points. That's why Kyler Murray didn't measure until he had to. Right. He didn't measure until he got stretched out for 3 weeks straight, and then went to the combine and was 1.5 inches taller. Boom. All right. We'll draft you number 1 overall. Right. But I know it sounds crazy, but that's the way the NFL works. They're all about the measurables. So yeah, you don't want to go there, and you don't want to present a negative data point, no matter even if it's, a 40 or testing, or say you're going to play and you're not 100%, and then they don't know you're injured and you're playing through an injury, anything that's going to reflect negatively, you want to avoid that. And your agent and your representative, they'll tell you, hey, I talked to some scouts and they're talking negatively about your weight. They're worried about you ballooning up to 375, 380 once you get that big paycheck. They figure you're going to be eating real good. They don't want to draft you to New Orleans because you're going to be eating like Zion. So, whatever it may be, it's stupid. It's scouting season, but they look for reasons not to draft you. That's the whole point of this season. All right. Anybody can look at a player and go, man, that player is really good at A, B, and C. That's easy to do. That's the untrained eye. The trained eye is actually trained to figure out what you need to coach up in a skill set, the liabilities in a skill set. And I think that's why the scouting season can get really silly, actually.
Yeah. It's well said. Because if I'm Tavondre, I want to leave the girth here, CJ, and should go in there and show my physicality and dominate. But, the next phase of that draft process is combine. I would guess he'll probably try to drop 10 or 15 pounds before the combine, so he's a little leaner, a little faster, a little quicker, all those things. And to Rod's point about anybody that's got a red flag about the weight, you don't have to worry about that Senior Bowl. You got a month then to lean out a little bit, run a little faster 40 time shuttles and those kind of things. And, the NFL, once you get into the league, then they're going to put you at a playing weight that they want you to be at, and you're going to be on that. But this is all part of it. And it's not a lot different than a beauty pageant or a stock show. Just you're looking. It really is. You're investing in the future for these NFL teams. So they are looking for reasons to not draft you for sure and not make a bad investment. But you also got to play that game too, the other side. As for the couple guys that are there, guys, and we'll talk some NFL draft because I did see where Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, put out his top 50 prospects. The Longhorns have 5 or 6 guys in the top 50 according to Daniel, which is huge for Texas and for these young guys. Daniel's one of the best. But for the 2 that are there, CJ, I saw you tweeting today some videos. Tavondre is doing himself proud and playing well there, despite not weighing in. And Christian Jones in one-on-one drills. This is for peaks that don't, for our viewers who don't know, the Senior Bowl game is not nearly as important as the week of practice because coaches and scouts get to get up close and watch these individual drills and one-on-ones. And these are some of the best players in the country against some of the best players in the country. And I thought to the video I saw you post, CJ, Christian Jones had himself a really good day.
He absolutely did. I thought in the one-on-one pass protection sets, that it draws a lot of, eyeballs. That's what the scouts want to see. Can you block the guy right in front of you and can you get around the guy right in front of you? That's as kind of ticky-tack as it might be, there's a lot of stock that goes into that. It's one of those weird deals where you're not in a scheme or a formation or a set. You're sitting there and saying, can I handle the guy right in front of me? And he did a tremendous job. I thought this was, if I haven't seen the best version of Christian Jones this past season, he did it today. I thought that was that superb of a performance at the Senior Bowl. I think to my count went 6 for 6 in pass rep wins. And he was going against the likes of Miles Cole, the Texas Tech defensive end with the 84 or 86-inch wingspan. Justin Igbugbe, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's out of Alabama as well. John Baptiste, the end out of Notre Dame. So it's not like he's going against guys who, we're just happy to be there. These are all guys who are looking to hear their name called within the first 2 or 3 rounds as well. So it was a tremendous outing for Christian Jones. And I thought, there's a very warm reception for him on Twitter as well from the Texas faithful. His coaching staff was very happy. Kyle Flood tweeted about it. A number of ex-players were able to kind of express their appreciation for what not only he meant to the Texas program and behind the scenes as a leader, but also, it's one of those cool things where, and Rod, you can attest to this, you see a guy that you've been in the locker room with for 3 or 4 years go out and, put on a performance that's going to probably earn him a few, rounds higher of a draft pick. It's exciting. That's one of those things that you root for. You go from competing against these guys to competing with these guys to rooting for these guys. And it's cool to see. So I thought Christian Jones specifically had a tremendous day there at the Combine. He was one of the biggest winners that I was able to watch from just about everybody that was out there. So a couple other guys that stood out. Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson was one. Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. Really impressive days all the way around. Tyler Guyton had a solid day, the tackle from Oklahoma as well. But really happy for Christian Jones. He deserves a standing O for the trajectory and path that he's been on his entire career. He's guys that you've seen, tangible improvements year in and year out. And if you're Kyle Flood, you can't be happier than watching, Christian Jones walk out there, put on a show and say, oh yeah, like I did that, let me go recruit as a result of this. So really impressive stuff.
That's awesome. And Rod, you've told me the story and told our audience the story about, he was a soccer player, Christian Jones.
He was.
We talked about Landon Rink down at Cypress Fair. I believe Christian was from the Cypress area too. And he was a soccer player that kept growing. And so he's got great feet, but he didn't start playing football until he was in like the 10th grade. And, he's still learning. I remember being at the Arkansas game when he was starting way too early. And he was coached by Herb Hand, which was not good for anybody, if memory serves. And he just got overwhelmed. I mean, we were at the Arkansas game, and he just had a really rough night, and you felt bad for him. But this is why fans and people don't give up on players, because you can keep getting better, you can keep coaching them and keep improving. And Christian Jones has just gotten better and better. And when you don't play football until the 10th grade, and all of a sudden you're playing D1 college football a couple years later, that's a big step. And we're seeing a young guy that is one of the nicer people you'll ever interview and talk to, who's really worked at it and now has got a chance to go be a professional.
Yeah, it is. It's a great story. That's why I understand, CJ, what you said about the players and how enthusiastic they were and how happy they were for Christian Jones, because you watched his journey. I mean, this is a guy that every year has improved. And that was a time I wasn't sure if Christian Jones wasn't an NFL caliber player. And now he's improved his stock to the point where, this guy's going to get drafted potentially in this NFL draft, in a deep offensive line draft. And he came in as, I believe that he was 6'3", about 215 when he got to high school, and he thought he was going to be a soccer player. He always talks about that. The coaches at Cy Creek, they saw
I think it was Cy Ridge, maybe.
Cy Ridge is one of the Cy schools.
One of the Cy's.
Cy Woods. Was it Cy Woods?
Yeah, you're right. I
think we got all the sides wrong. We got all the wrong. They got a ton of them now. I think it started off as the first one was Cy Creek, so I'm old school. But Cy Woods.
No, first one was Cy Fair. Was
it really?
That's the oldest one.
Cy Creek? Okay.
Yeah, that's the name of the district, Cypress Fairbanks, and then Cy Creek was 2, because that's where I went.
Yeah, exactly. So he went to Cy Woods, and the coaches, they basically, while he was walking through the halls, they wouldn't stop stalking him. I mean, he was tall, lanky. They didn't know. I don't think they knew he was going to be an offensive lineman. He all started out playing JV, and then think about this guy now is 330, somewhere around there. He's around 6'6", 330. So we talk about in about a 9-year span, he grows 3 inches and gains 115 pounds. So the truth is, the scouts love him because they're not sure how long he's been playing in this new body of his. Right, this is basically he's had this new body as an offensive lineman for probably every 5 or 6 years. Since he got to Texas and they started to transform him after his redshirt year, and he's gotten better every year. NFL scouts love that because that means he's coachable. He's coachable every year. He's got to take coaching, and he takes it. He takes it in no matter how harsh it may be. And this is the guy that's able to use it as motivation, but also use it to better himself. So I think that's what I love about him. Is number one, he's coachable, and I think his upside is tremendous because this is a guy, like I said, hadn't been playing football for a really long time and hasn't been that size for a really long time. Like he wasn't always the big dude. He grew into it.
Yeah, that's a great point, way to put it, that he's just learned how to use this girth of his, this body of his. And obviously, feet are important. Technique is massive. And Kyle Flood, one of the best teachers of it. And he's taken to it. He could have gone last year, but was told to go back and keep working. And he's done just that at him. So he was one of the, CJ, probably the most consistent offensive lineman Texas had last year. Kelvin Banks was obviously, prodigy and really good player, but Christian Jones, he was rock solid the whole year long, which was great to see. And now building on that into the Senior Bowl. Good stuff by you, CJ, with the tweets and the videos that people can go watch at your Twitter account for sure from the Senior Bowl. And obviously more coverage from CJ and on the On Texas channel to keep up with how Tavondre is doing, Christian Jones, and as we said, several other guys kind of bailed on it just to preserve themselves and weren't 100% healthy. Let's get some super chats in here on this Tuesday night Longhorn live stream. Justin Yarborough, Rod, do you think Taft can improve enough to make an NFL roster? Just realized you played with my favorite coach I played for, Jermaine Anderson.
Hey. Well, thank you, Justin. Appreciate that, man. Hey, Jermaine Anderson. I love you. One of them Texas City boys, man. And they brought in like 4 of them dudes from Texas City. I believe they were all in the same class too. Yeah, Jermaine Anderson's good people. Let me think about Taft Daddy as an NFL player. Right now, I don't see it, but you're right. You're saying can he improve enough to turn his draft stock, at least turn into a guy that can be a draftable prospect, and maybe doesn't get drafted. Right? We've seen plenty of guys not get drafted and kind of make their way to the NFL as an undrafted free agent, and we've seen several Texas players take that route. Right now, I don't see him as an NFL player, and I wonder if once Texas brings in these young DBs, they're going to bring in Derek Williams. I think is going to solidify his starting spot. Makuba is going to be and one of your other starting safeties there too. They like to rotate guys, but I wonder this season if he's going to get as many reps as he did last season, because last season he was the most assignment sound of those DBs, because he was the guy that was in the right place and where the coach expected him to be and where he was supposed to be. They had a lot of busts. They had a lot of guys who had mental errors back there, but not Taft Daddy. So I think this season, if they get more assignment sound play from their frontline guys, they should get that from Makuba. He's a veteran. Derek Williams is knowing his system now more because he's not a freshman. If that is the case, I don't know if he'll see as many reps as he did last season, but he definitely will be in the rotation. And right now, like I said, I love Taft. I think he's fantastic. Right now, I don't see NFL player for him, but that could change. He could surprise me. He's got a great nose for the football too.
Does he comp for you to like a Blake Gideon, who's his coach at safety, Rod?
Man, I hate to just make the white safety comparison. That just seems lazy. But no, I'm not. I don't know. No, I'm not saying that yours, but I'm with you. Yes, he could go that route, but. I'm sure there's another comparison I could make. It's just the other white safety I can think of. But no, man, you're right about that. I can see that. Blake Gideon was a hell of a player. Blake Gideon started more games at DBU than any other player in Texas football history.
Yep.
I mean, that was tremendous back there. And he was kind of the stabilizing force back there. Hell, Earl Thomas, a lot of times, he tell you the reason he was lined up in the right spot early on when he was a starter is because Blake Gideon made sure, hey, Earl, you better be 2 yards that way. You're number 2. You read number 2. Like he would, he kind of be the air traffic controller back there. Taft Daddy has that. He does have that ability. And I think that's what forces his way on the field, is because now he understands where to be and he understands why to be there. And I don't think all the other guys get why. They understand where to be, but he gets the why, which is why he can, at times, you'll see him circumvent certain responsibilities within the defense because he sees something about to be exposed, or he sees a vulnerability. And there are times where he will get there and try to stop the bleeding because he understands the whys, but a lot of players don't get the whys. But this season, I expect more of the DBs to be a little bit more I expect them to be a little bit more experienced. Not only that, but I expect them to be a little more cerebral in being able to diagnose plays themselves and, win the chess match within the game on the individual level. And I think Taft Daddy helps them with that. He's a high IQ, high acumen football player.
No question about that. And best abilities are dependability and reliability, right? When you're your coach, you want someone who is going to be in the right place and make the right play, even if he's not your biggest and fastest guy. It was smart when Texas announced to go to the SEC. There was going to be 4 years instead of A&M, and going so quickly, Sark was able to recruit and be SEC ready for this year. That's a good point, because A&M was, shotgun. They were like, get us out of here. We go 1 year later. They were into the SEC, but actually A&M was better early in the SEC than they have been of late. But, I do think, as we talked about on the top of the cast tonight, that, Texas is in a good place going in with maybe only Georgia and Ole Miss in a more solid spot in the SEC right now. You would obviously have said Alabama, but they're breaking in a new coach and a lot of change there. Texas is in a good place, but A&M was the better early guys. When they left the Big 12 and had Johnny Manziel and Kevin Sumlin, and obviously it has gotten pretty stale at A&M, and now Mike Elko's in.
Yeah, it's a fun practice to go through because, when we heard that Texas was going into the SEC, I think you could look at that roster at the time and say, are we sure? But, credit to Kyle Flood. Obviously Bo Davis had a good part in that as well, and getting the trenches ready. Steve Sarkisian had, the big picture approach and say, we have 15 scholarship wide receivers and we got 9 offensive linemen. Like what we're doing right now and what had been, underway at Texas, that's completely got to change. If we're going to go play against the best of the best and expect to compete, what we're doing from a recruiting standpoint and roster construction standpoint has got to be flipped upside down almost 100%. So I thought right now that's a really good point to just say, Texas has been building for the SEC move for quite a while. We've talked about what they were able to do right as the staff got here and go out and get 7 offensive linemen in the 22 class. They've obviously compiled some really talented pieces after that. You just got a 5-star out-of-state kid from Brandon Baker as well. So, you're starting to look at what Texas is prioritizing in their roster construction. It's good quarterback, explosive playmakers, and dominant trench play. That wins in the SEC. And I think that is exactly what they viewed it as. And, it certainly worked out for their benefit that, one, they didn't have to wait till 2025, so you could walk in with a third-year starting quarterback as well. But two, you have a very talented group of guys that are ready to compete in the SEC and compete against just about anybody in the country right now. It's been a tremendous job to build up to this point.
Yeah, and to add to that, remember when A&M went to the SEC, their O-lines were nice.
Yeah.
Remember, Sherman had been recruiting that O-line, man. That O-line was looking good. They had been stockpiling some O-line talent there. So on top of having Johnny football, the O-lines actually were pretty good, remember?
Yep.
That was one of the things that they had done really well. Yes, that was actually something they done really well there. And remember, Sark was asked about this. Sark was asked, did you start building this team? I think he was also asked, did you know if they were going to the SEC when you got the job? And he said no. He said, no. That was not discussed on the private jet. That nobody told me we were going to the SEC, and Sark, that's why we're getting you. When Sark was asked about, did you build this team? Was this roster build specifically designed to compete in the SEC? He said no. I believe he referenced it was built and constructed to compete in the college football playoff. He said that's what he studied. He didn't study the SEC, he studied the playoff, and he studied the teams that participated in the college football playoff, and he looked at the commonalities between those teams, the common traits. What they did well, what their strengths and weaknesses were. And that's when he came up with, he wanted size on the inside, right? He wanted girth inside, big humans. All right. He wanted big humans on this. That was also from his time in the NFL. Remember his time in the NFL, Atlanta got bullied a little bit around. And I think he also understood, man, I need big humans. So he went to the big humans philosophy after studying that. And I think and kind of going back to his time when Al Davis wanted to start to coach the Raiders, he's always been a guy obsessed with speed. And I think when he studied the playoff teams, he also came to the conclusion, I need speed. I need it everywhere. I need speed all around on the outside. Speed on the outside, mass, girth, big humans on the inside. That was his roster formula, period. Those are the two things he came away with. And I think he came away with premium positions that he wants to build around and make sure he stockpiles like quarterback, like wide receiver, and certain other positions. But I think his 2 key elements were speed, big humans, and everything else they can figure out. But you ain't going to compete in the college football playoff because you ain't going to be able to compete in the SEC without big humans and without speed. Those were the common traits that he thought that Texas needed to have. And they immediately started getting the big humans and immediately started getting speed on offense.
100%. And now more speed on defense, and obviously quarterback play big too, as CJ mentioned, and the Longhorns have stockpiled the quarterback room as well, including a visit with KJ Lacey today for Sark and AJ Milwee, if you joined us late up there in Saraland, Alabama. Jeff, appreciate you. Awesome job, gentlemen. What's going on with Michigan transfers? By the way, I'm not chanting SEC. Texas is Texas, not the South. There you go, Jeff. Good job.
Amen,
we already addressed the Michigan thing. Probably nothing percolating right now because of calendar and timeline, and they do still play school. They still go to and enroll, go to classes, and that calendar has begun. Michigan started class, early January. Texas started the same week, right after about January 10th, 11th, 12th. So, at this point with ad drops, it's tough to get into a school. I think CJ, you said it well, that probably best for this Michigan crew right now to play out the spring, see how Sharon Moore does, see where they're at, and there's a 15-day window that opens right after spring practice. That will be available to everybody, but Michigan players included.
That's where my mind is going. we're gonna wait and see. As y'all talked about, there was probably a little bit of a plan and kind of concocted up there in Ann Arbor to ensure that guys were staying on campus as long as they could, even with Jim Harbaugh departing for the NFL. That timing wasn't a mistake. The Chargers were playing for nothing. I think behind the scenes that deal was probably done a pretty long period of time beforehand, before it actually became official. So, if there's anybody that's gonna maybe not bend the rules, but find a loophole and, figure out ways to maximize advantages, that's Jim Harbaugh. So that's probably what was in place. Just theorizing here, obviously, but waiting period right now for Michigan. Obviously, that spring window after spring football and padded practices then should lend itself a pretty, I would say, wealthful a pit of talent to enter the portal, especially on the defensive line, where Texas is looking to prioritize from the portal.
No question about it. And obviously, the Longhorns will have guys that may want to jump out into the portal after their spring practice too. It's the way it goes in college football these days. All right, guys. Let's as we're past an hour now, let's talk some NFL draft, because Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, he is their lead draft analyst, and I think he does a tremendous job. I think we all are in that boat with Daniel. He put out his top 50 prospects today, not how the top 50 draft picks will go, but his top 50, 1 to 50, with Caleb Williams on top and Marvin Harrison Jr. number 2, and interesting that he's got Drake May up there, and also the LSU quarterback Jalen Daniels, who just won the Heisman Trophy as the top 3 quarterbacks. But 5 Longhorns made the top 50, guys, according to Daniel Jeremiah. By my count, 5. I heard you guys say 6 in our pre-chat, but I can only find 5. But
it's 5.
Byron Murphy at 22 as the highest rated Longhorn. A.D. Mitchell at 34, J.T. Sanders 41, Xworthy at 43, and Tavondre Sweat at 48. So of the top 50, 5 Longhorns. That's first round and a half in the NFL draft, if that's the way it slots, which it always doesn't. But that's high praise for the Longhorns. And just your thoughts
Pretty
on
good.
Byron Murphy being the first guy at 22, 2 receivers, a tight end, and another tackle.
Y'all probably know this answer better than I do, but the last year Texas had, a 10th of the top 50 players. How long ago was that?
Not long after Rod was playing. I mean, it was middle 2000s. It was middle 2000s.
Yeah, 2000s.
Middle 2000s when they had this many players, and that's his top 50 now. I mean, that can change. We haven't seen. We're talking about the draft. I look at in the top 100 picks, which is the first 3 rounds, and then those comp picks after round 3. The Longhorns could have 6-7 guys drafted, because if Christian Jones has an offseason like yours charting, CJ, he can be a guy that you look there, third round into the 4th as one of those type of players. Jalen Ford, the most fascinating guy for me, Rod, is Jonathan Brooks, because he was Mel Kiper's number 1 running back. And it's a pretty thin running back class. So
yes, it is.
If you're sitting there in the 2nd round and you need a running back, Dallas Cowboys and Houston Texans, some of those kind of teams that are looking for a lead back, and you can get a 1st round talent potentially in Jonathan Brooks, middle of the 2nd round, even in the late 2nd round. That's a good value still, because Jonathan Brooks is going to get healthy, and he's going to be you're drafting a player in a 2nd round, 3rd round spot that had a premium grade if he were healthy. Those are the kind of draft picks you want to make when you're building a roster.
Well, yeah, I mean, not talking about Jalen Ford, who's another guy that may not go, in the first 2 rounds potentially, just because of the premium position or the lack of a linebacker being a premium position. And premium positions may push that linebacker position down a little bit. But, I mean, that's a guy we all know is going to be a hell of a player in the NFL. And that's another dude who's going to end up getting drafted. I guarantee you somebody's got him much higher on this draft board than he is on everybody's big board, because they've watched the film on Jalen Ford and they understand, this guy's got a really high upside. So, I mean, I'm with you. I don't know if the Longhorns have had a draft this good in a long time with the depth of it. I mean, we've had in those 2000s, you had, Texas having guys getting drafted really high, or like in 2003 when I was drafted, we had 4 guys drafted there, but none of them were drafted high. We were drafted kind of in middle rounds. And you go look at it, I don't know if we've had this many guys. You're going to have players drafted in the 1st round. Looks like Byron Murphy and A.D. Mitchell are going to be those potential 1st round picks for Texas. And then you're going to have guys in the 2nd I think you probably go have a Longhorn in the third. You may have a Longhorn in like the first 3 or 4 rounds potentially, because Tavondre Sweat's getting pushed down to a second rounder. I think Jalen Ford and Jonathan Brooks don't get pushed down just because they don't draft running backs in the first round. So they're not going to draft them. The injury may push them down even more. I just don't remember having the depth of a draft like this for the Longhorns in a long time, just from top to bottom.
And
It's
a lot
impressive.
of these guys were guys they inherited, CJ. A lot of these guys were guys that were part of Tom Herman's recruiting classes that they got to stick and stay and develop. And, obviously JT Sanders was part of their first recruiting class. And, but that was a Tom Herman recruit, if memory serves, originally. But X-Man and AD Mitchell obviously through the portal. But it's great development. It's great, continuing improvement with what you want. I'll read this because, Rod, you mentioned, actually, we'll get to this super chat. NFL do not like players coming in at 23, 25 years old. Listening to Sports Radio earlier, they said trading picks late because of the drop of talent. Yeah, well, that's a good point, Rod, and we'll get back to the Longhorns, but it's something we've talked about here on the Tuesday live stream. It'll be an ongoing conversation. The ecosystem of the draft, we talk about ecosystems now, Rod, portal, college football. The ecosystem of the draft is changing because, and I think the Longhorns have got a couple of really good examples. Jahdae Barron and Alfred Collins would have been guys that normally would have been premium 5th, 6th round picks, right? Guys that you can get in that third day that you feel really good about, that you bring in. And gosh, Jason Kelsey was a 6th round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. You're looking for those guys. But now, because of NIL and the ability to get extra COVID years, guys like Alfred and Jahdae are staying, which there's already been, alarm bells sounded from the NFL, scouting side that, hey, that 5th, 6th, 7th round is not going to be as plentiful as it normally is because so many guys came back to college who could have gone early because of NIL opportunities. And guys like Jahdae and Alfred they don't want to be a 5th round pick. They want to be a 3rd round pick, a 2nd round pick, and they get a chance to come back and perform and improve their draft stock like we've seen Jonathan Brooks do, like AD Mitchell did this year. Obviously like Christian Jones has done. You're a stock, Rod. I mean, you're trying to improve and put yourself in the best spot possible. And now you can come back to school to make a little money while you're here.
Yeah, and it's I think also for the NFL scouts, I think it could also lower the bust rates, right? You got more evaluation, more thorough evaluations, I should say. You got more data points, you got more film to study, more of a sample size on these guys. Now they're coming back to school and they're in school longer. So yeah, the NFL doesn't like to invest in older players. By the time you get your 2nd contract, they like you to be in your prime. So you're, hopefully you're mid to late 20s, somewhere around there when you're approaching your 2nd contract. That's why they love an upperclassman that's trending the right, a lower underclassman that's trending the right way rather than, the upperclassman. But I will say that the NFL now, quarterback-wise, and I've heard Bobby talk about this too, and I agree, quarterback-wise, and maybe it's certain other positions too, I think the NFL actually covets players with a little bit more college experience so they can look at the sample size, they can look at the rate of development, the trajectory. Did they regress? Did they, why did they regress? Was it a new offensive coordinator? How'd they handle this? How'd you handle losing your top receiver? And then you can actually see how these quarterbacks develop rather than, oh man, it was was he a 1-year wonder? I don't know. He had a great year, but how does he respond to adversity? How would he respond in a new system? All those things. And you don't get that thorough sample size. So I think that's part of it that's going to be really good. I do think you could end up lowering some of the bust rates because scouts may have just a better overall evaluation in terms of different data points. But also, this is something that's been happening for a while. I think the number of underclassmen that declared for the draft this year is at 54. And I believe at 2018, it was at 106. Yep. So they cut it in half. The truth is, it's just way more fun to be a college football player than it used to be. There's never been a better time to be a college football player, period. That's it. That's in a nutshell. And it used to be everybody was trying to get the hell out of college as fast as they could. Even though college was fun, you wasn't getting no money, all right, in college, all right, and you weren't being paid for your reps. Now the guys are being paid for reps, and you have the ability to transfer without penalty. So I ain't got to deal with a coach if I want to transfer like in Rod B's day. No, I hit the transfer portal. Coach ain't got to know nothing. I got a lot more freedom. I got a lot more empowerment as a player. I can transfer without penalty multiple times now, by the way, multiple times. So I am a free agent. I can get my market value in the transfer portal with NIL. It's just, guys, you can stay in school as long as you want and get your master's degree and start on that if you want to. This is the best era to be a college football player. And maybe it's going to get better and better, but I don't know if it will. I think once the federal government steps in and put some guardrails on NIL, and then we get a body, right, an entity that controls all of major college football, and we get Nick Saban as a commissioner, I don't know if you'll have this freedom and flexibility these guys got right now with the extended eligibility and transferring when they want to without penalty. Pretty soon, they're going to put the kibosh on that. So this window right here, guys, this is the sweet spot, the greatest era in the history of college football to be a player. God bless these young men. God bless y'all. Enjoy it. Because even the ones after y'all want to enjoy it like this, y'all got the COVID eligibility year. You got the transfer portal, just chaos, all right, without any checks and balances at all. The NCAA is they are basically a shell of themselves. They don't even show up anymore. Nobody cares about the NCAA. Best time to be a college football player. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yep. Well said. And I think you're to circle around that whole conversation. Yes, the NFL still wants 20, 21-year-old players, right? JT Sanders and Byron Murphy, because to Rod's point, when they're 20, 21, when they enter the league, their second contract, they're 25. So if you keep them and re-sign them, you're getting 10 good years out of a player, and you're getting their prime years. And they're not worn out in 5 or 6 years of college. But a guy like Christian Jones needed 6 years in college to continue to develop and play and work with Kyle Flood. And now he's got a chance. So, there's all different kind of apples that go into the draft. Murphy and JT Sanders are, high ceiling players who are only 20, 21 years old when they begin their careers. Some guys will be a little older, but you're right. The NFL does want younger, preferably. But even reps, they'll take them. Because the other part about that for the super chat, even a 22, 23-year-old player now, if he's, as you say, the bust rate is limited, Rod, and you're getting a good player, you still have him, especially in those middle rounds. You still have him that's your cheap labor in the NFL. Yep. You still got them under control for 5 years. So if they can play, you don't have to re-sign them when they hit free agency. You can let them move on, but you get them for 5 years, and in a league where it's about your star players who make most of the money, and then you got to build a roster of 53 players around that. That's cheap labor. And if you draft well, so I think there's a marketplace for each of them and each of the positions. But I don't think there's any doubt, CJ, that to Rod's point about being a college athlete, we just saw Isaiah Bond leave Alabama, which is a great school and a great program, to come to Austin to play with Quinn Ewers to improve his draft stock. Jabbar Muhammad, the corner who was available from Washington, he's going to Washington because he wants to be a number one corner and improve his draft stock. That's player freedom. Last year we had A.D. Mitchell, who wanted to leave the national champions to come back to Texas to be closer to his kid and improve his draft stock. I mean, the player freedom is certainly there, and I think it's good. I do think it needs guardrails. I'm not silly enough to think it doesn't need some type of structure here, but I've always advocated and argued for player freedom, and I think it's a good thing where players can play where they're going to be and be best and be developed. But there's so many examples of all of what Rod just said.
Yeah, it's a fun conversation. It's interesting how it ranges across, multiple sports. Like you look at the NBA and you're probably thinking, well, there's too much player freedom. These guys can just hold out and demand to be traded and demand a max contract, whatever the case may be. Well, I don't think college football is going to get to that point. But to your point, Aaron, I certainly think that there needs to be some sort of, I would say, limitations to what kids can do in the terms of, whether it be transferring, NIL, whatever it is, just make sure that it doesn't become as lawless as, many theorized it potentially could be. And I think that so far it's not been crazy. You look at some of those big NIL deals that have gone out to 5-star quarterbacks and think, well, these are some of the red flags that we need to be a little bit wary of. But to the point of getting, these kids on campus right now and really giving them an opportunity to play as long as they can, to produce the film and tape that they need to go play in the NFL, I think that has been, a benefit to the kids more so than anything. And, COVID obviously sucked, but in the instances in which these kids are using that extra COVID year of eligibility, that's only helping them, achieve their dream of making it to the NFL or providing, a suitable lifestyle at home for which they're earning through NIL. So a lot going on right there, but I do agree with you, Rod, that this is the best time to be a college athlete. This is,
and it's not perfect. There's no doubt. I'm 100% agreement with Nick Saban that, we commit to you. There needs to be a commitment from the player too. There really does. But I've always said, how did we get here? We got here because the NCAA and college football as an industry was unwilling to be flexible and to change incrementally to these things. And coaches would hold players, to 2-year penalties and not let them sign their transfer waivers and lock them into a place, even though they had family issues or coaches were just dicks. Let's be honest. They were asses with this situation, and the players were kind of stuck, which I thought was unfair. At the same time, the NIL, this was all forced on them by losing court battle after court battle after court battle, and then state governments had to get involved. And it's why we're here. But we all would agree that there needs to be. I'm with Rod of Nick Saban as the commissioner or czar of college football at some point. That would be great. We need it. But right now it is what it is. And we talk about it every Tuesday, and we talk about it every morning, you and I, Rod. Fascinating to follow. And as we see, TV ratings for college and pro football have never been greater. I mean, fans still are flocking to these games, whether in person or watching them or following us on Texas Football, which is a good thing. And we'll follow it as it evolves and changes for sure as we get this thing going. But a lot to cover. Senior Bowl this week. I know you guys will have coffee and football tomorrow, CJ. You'll be covering the recruiting landscape. We'll be 1 week to the second signing window. So obviously if anything evolves and develops there, we'll jump on it. And CJ will have that tomorrow morning with Bobby and the crew. Rod and I will be on hornfm.com, obviously, getting this thing going. Any final parting thoughts, guys, as we wrap this thing up on a Tuesday night brought to you by Texas Electricity Ratings?
No, not at all, really. Just I'm excited actually about the pre-draft process for these guys. We haven't had this many Longhorns as draftable prospects in, I can't remember, not since I've been covering Texas football. I'll say that. I had to go back to before my time covering, which was maybe 05 and back 04, that kind of thing. So I think that's actually been a really exciting time for Texas Longhorn fans.
Well, I'll do some work on it. I covered it long enough to see when Leonard Davis was the second pick in the draft, and Derek Johnson was coming out. I mean, we've seen it, and I think it's going to keep getting better for Texas. But yeah, they could have as many as 8 players drafted here coming up in April, last weekend of April. CJ.
No, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's exciting to turn on Senior Bowl and, even the East-West Shrine game and say, you know what, like there's a number of Longhorn helmets out there. It's not been that case. And I know there's even guys that are sitting out, but in every mock draft, it's like, oh, they've got, Xavier Worthy 5 spots higher than before. Or, someone's moving up the board. Christian Jones tomorrow will probably come out as one of the biggest risers from day one in Mobile, Alabama. So it's exciting. And I think this is a sign of a healthy program that we're not sitting around talking about, how much depth Texas lost and it's going to be a down year. We're looking at a roster that is still very healthy. So it's exciting time.
No question. And that's why the On Texas Football channel is blowing up and so popular. We appreciate you wherever you're watching tonight. And certainly if you're in the state of Texas and you're shopping for electricity in the deregulated areas of the Lone Star State, TexasElectricityRatings.com is the best place to find great electricity plans for your household. For starters, it filters out the dangerous and gimmicky plans from providers that are all hat, no cattle when it comes to your monthly bill. You can also shop by rate. Also, an average bill you can find an average bill to feature exactly what it takes into account general seasonal usage and get you a real number, not some placeholder number. So if you're looking for a new electricity plan, check out TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF on Texas football for the best options available. That's TexasElectricityRatings.com/OTF, bringing us the Tuesday live stream tonight. Guys, have a great night, and you guys are fired up with coffee and football at 8 a.m.